You think you understand a memory. Fine. You think memory is your life stored somewhere inside you, like a camera, like a hard drive, like a library in your skull. And you think forgetting is just a failure, a leak, a flaw. But why do you forget? Why does a name you know vanish right when you need it? Why does a thought disappear the moment you walk into another room? Why do whole weeks collapse into nothing, while one sentence from 10 years ago still burns? Most people don't ask. They repeat words: stress, distraction, bad memory. But that's not an answer. That's just renaming the mystery. Forgetting isn't a bug. Forgetting is the compression algorithm that keeps you conscious. Without it, your mind doesn't get smarter. It drowns. Let me show you. Start with something simple. You walk into a room and the thought is gone. Not fading, not blurry, deleted. You walk back out and it snaps back like nothing happened. A doorway just edited your mind. That's not random. That's the mind showing you the gears. And memory isn't what it feels like from the inside. If it worked the way it feels, you'd never survive your own past. Now it gets weirder because you've done this in places you didn't even notice. You open your phone to check one thing, a message, a time, a reminder, and 10 seconds later, you're scrolling like you woke up there. Not because you're weak, because you crossed a boundary. A new scene loaded, a new set of cues lit up, and the original intention didn't have support, so it dropped through the cracks. That's what the doorway is revealing. Your mind is not one continuous stream. It's a sequence of scenes, stitched together so smoothly you mistake it for reality, until it slips. And notice what you do in the doorway moment. You don't try harder. You go back to the previous context. You reload the scene, because the thought isn't a file, it's a state. It depends on the environment that birthed it. That should change how you see forgetting immediately. Most forgetting is not deletion. It's context mismatch. It's the key no longer fitting the lock because the room changed. Now keep that in mind, because it's going to return later as the payoff. Now watch. When you remember something, it feels like retrieval. Like you're pulling a file from storage, a birthday, a conversation, a face. Press play. Past appears, but that's not what's happening. Memory is reconstruction. Your brain doesn't preserve the past in full resolution. It can't, so it stores fragments, edges, associations, a few anchors, and then rebuilds the scene later. Here's the part people miss. When you remember, you're not opening a vault. You're running a generator. Your brain takes whatever scraps survived and fills the rest in with what times should times be there. And it does it so smoothly you mistake it for truth, which means something uncomfortable. Confidence isn't proof. You can feel certain and be wrong. Not a little wrong, completely wrong. Here's the part that should bother you. In a famous experiment, people watched a car crash. Later, they were asked a question. Only one word changed. Not the crash, not the video, one word. And that one word manufactured broken glass in their memory. Think about that. A single verb can insert a detail into your past. And it feels real. It feels like it was always there. So here's the stab. If one word can rewrite your memory, then memory isn't truth. It's persuasion. Now it gets personal, because this isn't just about car crashes. It's about every story you've ever told about yourself. I've always been this way. That's who I am. I remember exactly why I did it. Do you, or do you remember the version that makes you coherent now? Because reconstruction doesn't just fill gaps in events. It fills gaps in identity. It turns messy motives into clean narratives. It turns accident into intention. It turns randomness into fate. That's comforting, but it's not reality. Now reset. Because the next question is obvious. If memory is this fragile, why would a brain build itself this way? because it has no choice. Your brain is about 2% of your body's mass, but it burns roughly 20% of your energy. 20% for an organ you can hold in two hands. The mind is expensive. Here's another way to feel that budget. Try to hold 4 things in your mind at once. A phone number, a grocery list, a face you just met, and the sentence you're about to say next. You can do it for a moment. Then one slips. That isn't laziness, that's physics. Your conscious workspace is tiny. A few active patterns, max. So the brain has to keep clearing the table. It has to decide what stays now and what gets pushed into the dark. That clearing is forgetting. Not as an accident, as a control system, because if everything stayed active, you wouldn't be superhuman. You'd be paralyzed. So the brain makes a trade. It doesn't store your life. It stores the update your life created. A day is a flood. Light, sound, faces, decisions, thousands of moments. Most of them change nothing, so your brain compresses. It keeps what predicts. It drops what doesn't. Here's a brutal way to see it. A day has 86,400 seconds. If your mind stored even one snapshot per second, that's 86,400 snapshots every day, and perception isn't 1 frame per second. It's a storm. Even if you had infinite storage, you'd have a different problem. Search. How do you find anything inside that pile? How do you pull the exact feeling of Tuesday morning out of a mountain of noise? So the brain does what every intelligent system does when reality is too large. It summarizes, it removes detail and keeps structure. Like a map doesn't preserve every blade of grass. It preserves what gets you somewhere. That's what memory is, not a documentary. A navigation system, and the navigation system is written in usefulness. That's why you can't remember what you wore 3 Tuesdays ago. But you can remember one humiliating sentence from 10 years ago with perfect clarity, because embarrassment changes your model. It teaches you what to avoid. Tuesday doesn't. So Tuesday dissolves, and when compression works, you don't notice it. You don't think, I'm compressing my day. You just feel a clean summary. Nothing happened, something happened. That mattered, that was dangerous. It's not storing your experience. It's storing what your experience means for the next move. That's why memory feels like wisdom when it's working, because it isn't giving you the past, it's giving you the lesson. Now here's the price. Compression makes you faster, but it also makes you blurrier. And that blur shows up as a very specific kind of forgetting. Confusion. You've been taught to imagine memories like files in drawers. Open the right drawer, get the right memory. But memories aren't objects, they're pathways. Think of a forest. Every time you learn something, you cut a path. Walk it enough times, it gets clear, fast, automatic. But the forest gets crowded. Paths overlap. They share the same first steps. So when you try to remember, sometimes you step onto the wrong trail. That's why you type the old password even after you changed it. Same beginning, wrong ending, and from the inside, it feels like blankness. I know this, it's right there. It is, you're just standing at an intersection, and your brain refuses to guess, because guessing feels like being wrong. Here's what's terrifying. Experience makes the forest denser. The more you live, the more the world repeats. Same rooms, same conversations, same kinds of days. So the brain does the sensible thing. It merges, it averages, it turns 10 similar mornings into one pattern, how mornings go. Efficient, but it means you can't retrieve the 10th morning with perfect detail, because the 10th morning got compressed into the rule. That's not memory failing, that's memory generalizing. Now reset, because there's another clue hiding in plain sight. A clue that proves memories don't live in storage. They live behind cues. You think you've forgotten something completely. Years gone, then a smell hits you. And suddenly you're not remembering you're there, a kitchen, a hallway, a childhood room, lighting, temperature, a voice. It arrives like time travel. That's indexing. The memory wasn't erased. The root was just asleep, and a cue woke it up. A song can do it. A taste can do it. But smell is brutal. One molecule and the whole scene rebuilds, which means forgetting is often not destruction. It's disconnection. You didn't lose the memory. You lost the handle. Now here comes the twist. The one that breaks people. You think remembering protects a memory. It doesn't. Remembering opens it. When you recall something, you reactivate the network. And when it reactivates, it becomes editable. Then it has to be stored again. Not as it was, as it is now, with whatever your current mind adds, your mood, your interpretation, your story about yourself. So here's the line that should hit like a hammer. The more you remember a story, the less you remember what actually happened. Because every retelling is a rewrite, not a lie, a mutation. That's why childhood memories feel like scenes from a movie. They're not raw footage. They're edited versions that survived because they were repeated. And every time you tell the story, you polish it. You sharpen the villain. You clean up your motive. You add meaning that wasn't there. You don't do it on purpose. You do it because the brain prefers coherence over chaos. This is why two honest people can argue about the same moment forever. They're not comparing recordings. They're comparing reconstructions. And each reconstruction has been revised by every retelling, every reaction, every later piece of information. You hear a new detail, your brain snaps it into the old scene, and now you can't tell which parts were original. The memory feels older than the edit. That's the danger. The rewrite is invisible from the inside. Memory doesn't just fade. Memory mutates. Now bring back the doorway, because now you can finally see what it really was. You walked into a room, the thought vanished. You walked back out, it returned. A doorway didn't erase your mind like a thief. It forced a scene change. Your brain cuts reality into scene, and every scene change resets what's active. Most of the time that's perfect. It keeps you from dragging the entire world in your head at once. But sometimes your intention doesn't survive the cut. So you stand there, blank, because the thought belonged to the previous scene, and the scene is gone. Doorways just make the illusion fail. But if you want to see what memory really is, watch what happens when it breaks completely. There are people who cannot form new long-term memories. They can talk, reason, laugh. They can meet you, understand you, respond to you, and then 10 minutes later, you're a stranger again. Not because they don't care, because the experience never became durable. So life keeps rebooting. A conversation happens, then it's gone. A joke lands, then it's gone. You leave the room, come back, and their face resets. Polite, neutral, searching. Now, and suddenly you realize what memory actually is. It's not a scrapbook, it's continuity. It's how a mind carries itself forward. Without it, time shatters into moments. No accumulation, no narrative, no self that persists. So here's the truth. Forgetting isn't the failure of memory. Forgetting is the feature that makes memory possible. A mind that never forgot wouldn't be superior. It would drown, buried under noise, buried under overlap, buried under an unfiltered past it can't compress. You wouldn't have wisdom, you'd have data. And data is not understanding. Now go one level deeper, because the thing you thought was you was never the archive. You are not a recording. You are a model, and the you that survives over time is not everything that happened. It's what your brain decided mattered. Embarrassment stays because it updates prediction. Loss stays because it rewrites expectations. Fear stays because it changes behavior. And everything else gets compressed into silence. Memory doesn't preserve truth. Memory preserves you. A machine built to survive reality, not record it. And somehow, impossibly, you can see the machinery, you can catch the edits, you can feel the seams, you can notice the moment a doorway cuts a thought in half. That's the strangest part. A system that rewrites itself and can still look back and recognize the rewrite. So the next time you forget a name, or lose a thought, or watch a memory change in your own hands, don't just call it failure. See what it really is. A living system trading accuracy for survival, detail for speed, archive for function, a mind staying light enough to move through the world. And the fact you can notice the trade at all, the fact a process can observe its own compression, that might be the deepest thing about being human. Not comfort, truth,